left us for her. That's the sentence that plays in my head every time someone posts a cute throwback Thursday of their parents dancing at their wedding, or a Father's Day tribute about the man who was always there. Because my dad was there until he was. He left my mom and me for the woman he swore was his soulmate, right up until the judge signed the child support order and his account balance dropped. That was the exact day she packed her bags, blocked his number, and left him sitting alone in a cheap apartment, wondering how the family he threw away managed to land on their feet while he lost everything. And this is how it all happened, from the moment he chose her over us to the day she proved exactly what she'd really loved: his money. Won before he needed to be happy. If you'd asked 8-year-old me what kind of dad I had, I would have said the fun one without even thinking. He was the kind of dad who turned grocery runs into adventures. We'd race the cart down the cereal aisle, and he'd let me sneak a chocolate bar into the basket when my mom wasn't looking. He'd let me stay up past my bedtime to watch movies, as long as we don't tell mom. He'd show up to school events with his shirt a little wrinkled and his tie half loose, but he'd be loud in the best way, clapping the hardest, whistling when my name was called. My mom was the opposite of him in almost every way. She was the organized one, the person who knew where everyone's shoes were when the electricity bill was due, and which teacher needed a permission slip signed. She ironed his shirts, packed his lunches, and left sticky notes on the fridge reminding him of dentist appointments and parent-teacher conferences. He liked to joke that she was the boss, like it was some kind of adorable personality quirk. "Your mother runs this house like a company," he'd say, ruffling my hair. "Lucky for us, huh?" I thought it was a compliment. Most of my childhood memories are soundtracked by the noises of a tired family doing its best. My mom humming while she folded laundry, my dad's keys jingling as he came home late, muffled adult conversations behind closed doors about money, about work, about next year will be easier. I didn't know it at the time, but those conversations were cracks forming in the foundation. It wasn't one big fight that broke them. It was 100 small resentments piling up in the corners of our house like dust bunnies. My dad hated that he was always tired. He hated that his days were predictable: same office, same coworkers, same commute, same couch, same TV shows. Sometimes he'd come home and sit in the driveway for a long time before coming inside. I'd watch from the front window, wondering if he was listening to the end of a song on the radio. My mom would glance at him, then glance away, like she was trying not to notice how long he lingered before actually opening the door. Then one day, he started coming home later. At first, it was traffic. Then it was late meetings. Then it was going for a drink with the guys, grown-up time. My mom didn't argue at first. She'd just say, "Okay, text me if you'll be late," and serve me dinner at the same spot at the kitchen table, his plate covered with foil in the oven. He stopped eating that plate more and more. Sometimes he'd come in smelling like a bar at midnight, kiss my forehead, and tell me to go back to sleep. Other times, he'd sleep on the couch and pretend it was because of his back. I didn't understand then that adults can be present and absent at the same time that someone can sit at your table, smiling, while their mind is already somewhere else entirely. I just knew my mom started talking less and sighing more. I knew my dad's laugh got louder and faker, like he was forcing it out of his chest. And I knew the first time I heard him say the words, "I deserve to be happy too," it wasn't about a new hobby or a promotion. It was about her. To the woman he left us, for I didn't meet her at first. I met her perfume. It clung to him when he came home late. It didn't smell like anything my mom owned, too sweet and sharp at the same time. A scent that walked into the room before he did. One night, he came into my room to say goodnight and leaned over to kiss me. I wrinkled my nose. "You smell weird," I said. He froze for half a second, then laughed. "Guess somebody in the office overdid it on the perfume today," he said lightly. "Corporate people, am I right?" I nodded, because I was a kid, and corporate people sounded like a species that lived in his building downtown. My mom wasn't so easily fooled. I'll never forget the night they thought they were being quiet. I was supposed to be asleep, but I had gotten up to get water. Their voices leaked down the hallway, sharp whispers that cut through the dark. "Do you think I'm stupid?" my mom hissed. "I'm just talking to someone," my dad snapped back. "I need someone to talk to who doesn't treat me like a walking paycheck." There was a painful silence. "I treat you like a partner," she said finally. "And like the father of our child who needs you to come home, not just send texts at midnight. You and I both know she's better off with you," he said. "You don't need me here to keep this place running. You've never needed me." The words hit me like a slap, and I wasn't even in the room. I heard something crash, the sound of a glass hitting the countertop too hard. Then my mom's voice, low and furious. "So now you're the victim. Is that what she tells you? That you're this misunderstood hero whose wife doesn't appreciate him enough?" He didn't answer out loud, but a week later, I met someone from work. Her name was Claire. She was younger than my mom by how much, I wasn't sure, but enough that her face looked smooth and unbothered in the pictures on her Instagram, where every post was either a filter-heavy selfie or a boomerang of cocktails clinking in some dimly lit bar. She had long, perfectly curled hair and nails that made a tap, tap, tap sound on her phone screen. She wore lipstick to grab a quick coffee and heels to go nowhere important. He introduced us at a mall food court. "It'll be fun," he'd said when he picked me up from my mom's. "We'll grab lunch and see a movie." When we got there, she was already sitting at a table, sipping an iced drink and scrolling through her phone. She didn't stand up when we walked over. "Hey," she said, smiling bright at my dad before glancing at me. "And this must be the famous kid." Like I was a mascot, not a person. My dad laughed like she'd said something clever. "Yeah, this is my girl," he said. "Sweetheart, this is Claire. We work together." They did not work together. Not unless you count building a lie as a job. We spent the afternoon pretending everything was normal. She bought me a pretzel and asked me fun questions, like what my favorite subject was and whether I had a boyfriend yet. My dad kept looking at her like she'd hung the moon. Every time he laughed at something she said, a small, invisible thread snapped between him and the house I still called home. Within a few months, those threads were gone. The night he left is burned into my memory in HD. suitcase in the hallway. My mom sitting at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug she wasn't drinking from. Me in the doorway, in pajamas, clutching a stuffed animal I hadn't slept with in years, but somehow needed that night. He cleared his throat. "I'm going to be staying somewhere else for a while," he said carefully, like he was delivering bad news to a client instead of detonating his family. "Claire has a place closer to work, and it makes sense right now." My mom didn't look at him. "Just say you're leaving," she murmured. "You don't have to dress it up." He looked at me then, eyes shiny. "This isn't about you," he said. "It's just, I need to be happy too, okay? One day you'll understand." What I understood at 11 years old was that my father was choosing a woman he'd known for less than a year over the people who had been there his entire life. He kissed the top of my head. "I'll see you all the time," he promised. "Nothing's going to change between us." Everything changed. 3 child support, and going broke the first few months after he left felt like living on a fault line. On his weeks, he played the role of cool dad on steroids, and Claire took me to theme parks and trampoline places, posted Family Day. Photos with me sandwiched between them like I was part of their new brand. He bought me expensive sneakers my mom would never have spent money on, and gadgets I'd casually mentioned once. "See," he'd say, shooting Claire a look. "Told you I can take care of my girl." Claire would smile and kiss his cheek like the whole thing was adorable. Back at my mom's, the lights stayed on because she worked extra shifts and cut coupons. She'd put the sneakers in the closet and gently suggest I wear my regular shoes to school instead, where nobody would step on them in the hallway. "We're not going to let him buy your love," she said firmly. "You don't owe him excitement just because he shows up with gifts." Still, I saw the way she looked at the receipts left in my backpack, the price tags I forgot to throw away. Every number on those little bits of paper represented money that wasn't helping pay for my school supplies, our groceries, or the rent on the house I actually lived in most of the time. For a while, my dad paid cash informally. He'd hand my mom some folded bills at drop-off with a tight smile, like he was doing her a favor instead of contributing to the child he'd helped create. When he started forgetting to bring it, when weeks went by with a new excuse each time, new car payment, unexpected bills, were stretched this month, my mom did the one thing he never thought she would. She went to court. I didn't know the details at the time. I just knew there were lawyer meetings, stacks of documents, and nights where she sat at the dining table with a calculator, her face pinched in concentration. I also knew that after she filed, the vibe on my dad's weekends changed. Wasn't quite as generous suddenly. He ordered water instead of soda at restaurants, made tight comments about how expensive everything is, and how some people think money grows on trees now that judges are involved. Claire did not love this version of him. At first, she tried to make it cute. "We'll be fine, babe," she'd say, sliding her arm through his. "We just have to budget better." No big, but better budgeting meant fewer trips, fewer big gifts, fewer nights out at expensive bars. It meant my dad checking his banking app with a clenched jaw when the first official child support draft hit his account. I remember that day vividly, even though I wasn't with him. I was at home with my mom when her phone buzzed. She frowned, then opened her banking app. For the first time since he'd left, a larger, consistent amount had landed, automatic, not reliant on him remembering to stuff bills into an envelope. She stared at the screen for a long time, like she didn't quite trust it. Then, to my surprise, she started to cry. Not loud, chest-heaving sobs. Silent tears that rolled down her cheeks as she pressed the back of her hand to her mouth. "It's not about the money," she said when she saw me watching. "It's about not having to beg for what you're already owed." What we didn't know then was that a few miles away, my dad was staring at a similar notification with a very different expression. The story of what happened on his side came to me in pieces over the next weeks, from things he let slip, from rumors in the family, from one disastrous weekend visit. That first child support payment hit his account like a meteor. His rent, car payment, nights out, and lifestyle with Claire had been built around the old way. He divided his paycheck, mostly for himself. Something small when he remembered for us. Now, a fixed chunk was carved out before he even laid hands on it. He was furious, not at himself for walking out, not at the system for simply enforcing responsibility, at my mother for daring to insist that his daughter's well-being wasn't optional. Claire watched the numbers with interest. She'd liked the version of my dad who could say, "Don't worry, I've got it," without hesitating. The dinners, the weekend trips, the gifts, just because those hadn't just made her feel loved, they'd made her feel upgraded. Being with a man who had a family he'd walked away from was messy, but at least he was broke, as she put it. The afternoon the child support hit, the story goes, he showed her his banking app, cheeks flushed with anger. "Look at this," he said. "This is insane. How am I supposed to live like this?" She looked. She did the math. She realized that, for the first time since she'd met him, being with him might actually cost her something. And that was the day she quietly chose her true priority. Not him. Not me. The money. The next morning started like any other weekend at his place, except the air felt different, even to me. For the day she left when my dad picked me up that Saturday, he was already on edge. He honked from the driveway instead of coming to the door. My mom glanced through the curtain, then at me. "Remember," she said quietly, crouching to my level. "If you feel uncomfortable at any point, you call me. I don't care what time it is." I nodded, more out of habit than understanding. At that age, uncomfortable meant itchy sweaters and math homework, not emotional landmines. Dad barely said hi when I got into the car. "Seatbelt," he muttered, eyes fixed straight ahead. No joke. No "hey, kiddo." No story about a song on the radio. His jaw was tight enough to crack a tooth. We drove in silence for a while, the radio playing some pop song he'd normally be humming along to. "Everything okay?" I finally asked. "Peachy," he said, a little too quickly. "Just grown-up stuff." At the apartment, Claire's car wasn't in its usual spot. Inside, the difference hit me immediately. Her shoes weren't by the door. The entryway table, usually cluttered with her keys, sunglasses, and cosmetic bag, was almost bare. Only his things remained: a lonely set of keys, a crumpled receipt, yesterday's mail. I frowned. "Where's Claire?" he swallowed. "Out," he said. "She's finishing some things." We spent the morning in a weird limbo. He turned on a movie but didn't watch it, staring past the screen. Every time his phone buzzed, he snatched it up and then tossed it down again a second later, expression getting darker each time. At lunch, he burned the grilled cheese. He never burned grilled cheese. "Are you mad at me?" I asked, when he cursed under his breath and scraped charred bread into the trash. That snapped him out of it. "No," he said quickly, softer. "No, I'm not mad at you. Sorry. I'm just dealing with some things." He set a plate in front of me, one sandwich salvageable, one a little too brown. I took the burnt halves without complaining. Something in me understood that this was not the moment to ask for better. In the afternoon, the front door finally opened. We both looked up at once. Claire stood there, not with shopping bags or takeout like usual, but with a small suitcase and a tote bag over her shoulder. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun that looked nothing like her carefully curated Instagram photos. She froze when she saw me. "Oh," she said, "you're here." "I told you she'd be here," my dad said, voice sharp. "It's my weekend." She shifted the suitcase handle in her hand, eyes darting between us. "We need to talk," she said. "Privately." He glanced at me. "We can talk in front of her," he said. "She's already in it. Might as well let her hear what you have to say." Even at 11, I knew that was a bad idea. Claire's lips tightened. "Fine," she said. "I can't do this anymore." The words landed with a physical thud. My dad blinked. "Can't do what?" "This," she said, gesturing around at the apartment. The situation, the drama, the money. There it was. "The money," he repeated, incredulous. "This is about the money," she laughed, a short, humorless sound. "What did you think it would be about?" she snapped. "We talked about this. You said you had things under control. Now half your paycheck is gone before you even see it. You're stressing out over every dinner, and your ex is dragging you to court every 5 minutes." "She's not dragging me anywhere," he cut in. "I'm paying for my kid. That's what dads do." For a second, I almost forgave him everything. The anger in his voice wasn't for me. It was for the implication that I was some inconvenience instead of his child. But the moment passed as quickly as it came. Claire threw up her hands. "Look, I didn't sign up to be broke," she said. "When we got together, things were different. You had freedom, you had money, we could go places. Now it's all stress and court dates, and sorry, can't afford that this month." My dad's face crumpled. "We're just adjusting," he said. "It's temporary. Once things settle, we'll..." She shook her head. "I don't want to wait for once," she said. "I'm not going to sacrifice my 20s so you can play martyr dad on the weekends and broke bachelor the rest of the time." Silence. I could hear my own heartbeat. I stared at the cartoon characters on the paused TV screen, wishing I could melt into them. "Wow," my dad said finally. "So that's it. Soon as child support hits, you're out." She flinched at the word like it was something dirty. "I'm not a villain," she said, voice small. This isn't the life I want." She turned to me then, as if remembering I existed. "Sorry, kid," she said, not meeting my eyes. "You're sweet. This just isn't working." I didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. She walked into the bedroom, emerged a minute later with the rest of her things, and left her copy of the apartment key on the counter. At the door, she hesitated. "Take care of yourself," she told my dad. "And them, I guess." Then she was gone. The door clicked shut. For a long time, my dad just stood there. Then he sank onto the couch like somebody had cut his strings. I watched him, my sandwich congealing on the plate. Part of me wanted to say, "I told you so," even though I'd never actually warned him. Part of me wanted to say, "That's what you get." Instead, I said the only thing that felt safe. "Do you want me to finish my movie in my room?" He looked at me like he'd forgotten I was there. "No," he said hoarsely. "You can stay." So we sat together in the wreckage of his choices, watching cartoons neither of us really saw. He didn't cry. He didn't apologize. He just stared at the TV while the realization settled over both of us. He had left us for someone who left him the second being with him required sacrifice instead of perks. And we, my mom and I, were still there. Not for him, for each other. 5, picking up what he dropped after that weekend, something shifted permanently. My dad still had his court-ordered time with me, but the energy was different. The performative, cool dad persona faded. There were no more expensive day trips, no more random gadgets. We spent weekends watching movies on his tiny TV, eating cheap takeout or boxed macaroni. He complained a lot about child support, about rent, about how your mother is bleeding me dry, and judges always side with the woman. The first few times, I sat there in silence, absorbing his bitterness like secondhand smoke. Then one day, my mom's words echoed in my head. "You don't owe him excitement just because he shows up with gifts." Now he wasn't even showing up with gifts. All he was bringing was resentment. "Mom, S not bleeding you dry," I said quietly, surprising both of us. "She's paying for food and school and the house I live in. That's for me, not just for her." He stared at me. "You don't know what you're talking about," he said. "You're a kid." "Yeah," I said. "I'm a kid. That's why you're supposed to take care of me." The words hung in the air between us, electric. He looked away first. That night, when my mom picked me up, she studied my face the way she always did the little scan for damage you learn to do when you share custody with someone who doesn't always put the child first. "How was it?" she asked. I shrugged. "He's sad," I said. "Claire left." Her expression didn't change much, but I saw something pass through her eyes. Not satisfaction, not glee, just a complicated mix of "I knew this would happen, and I wish it hadn't taken you down with it." "I'm sorry you had to see that," she said. "I'm not," I said. Now he knows what it feels like when someone just leaves. At home, life was still hard, but there was a strange stability to our struggle. My mom took on extra hours, but also started making different kinds of decisions. She sold some jewelry she never wore and used the money to pay off a credit card. She switched us to cheaper phone plans. She turned budgeting into a game, showing me how we could stretch certain categories if we saved in others. "Money is just a tool," she said one night at the kitchen table, spreading out envelopes with labels like rent, groceries, school, emergency. "Your father used it to impress people. We're going to use it to protect ourselves." She never bad-mouthed him openly. She didn't have to. Reality spoke loudly enough. On my birthdays, he sometimes sent big gestures he couldn't afford: a bike one year, a tablet the next, and then fell behind on payments for months. She rolled up her sleeves and covered the shortfall. On holidays, he'd complain that traveling to see me was so expensive now, and she'd quietly drive the extra distance to meet him halfway if it meant I wouldn't be disappointed. When I was old enough to understand, she showed me the paperwork. "This is what he's supposed to pay," she said, pointing to the court order. "This is what actually shows up. I'll never tell you not to love him, but I will always tell you the truth." The truth was simple. He chose someone who valued him for what he could provide rather than who he was. We chose each other even when there was nothing extra to give. Over time, the jagged edges of the whole mess dulled. My dad dated other people on and off. None of them moved in. None of them lasted long. Every once in a while, he'd call me and talk wistfully about back when things were easier, like his life had just randomly fallen apart instead of being a consequence of his own decisions. "You know I left because I needed to be happy, right?" he said once, when I was about 16. I couldn't stay in a marriage where I felt trapped. I thought about my mom working double shifts, trapped in a budget she hadn't chosen. I thought about myself at 11, sitting on his couch while his girlfriend rolled a suitcase out the door. "I get that you wanted to be happy," I said slowly. "I just think you confused happy with excited." He didn't reply. We changed the subject. 6. When karma looks like consequences, the real everything he lost didn't hit me until I was getting ready to graduate high school. By then, years had passed since Claire. My dad's hair was thinner, his face a little more lined. The apartment was smaller. He'd moved to a cheaper one after a layoff and a messy attempt at self-employment that tanked. The child support order never changed, though. He tried to get it reduced once and failed. The judge looked at his choices, his income, and the fact that my mom had been the stable parent for so long, and decided the number was fair. Fair didn't mean easy, but it was just. One afternoon, after we'd toured a local college together, he drove me back to my mom's and parked in the driveway without turning off the engine. "I know I haven't always been the dad you deserved," he said quietly, "but I'm proud of you. You and your mom did good." I knew what he meant. We had built a life without him as the center. He was a satellite now, still in orbit, but no longer the sun. "Thanks," I said. He hesitated, then added, "Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I just stayed, if I'd done the work instead of running away. In another life, maybe he would have. Maybe he would have gone to therapy or found a way to communicate with my mom instead of confiding in a woman who liked the thrill of his midlife crisis more than the reality of his responsibilities. But in this life, his what-ifs didn't change what had actually happened. He left. She left him when the money shifted direction. We stayed. You can't rewrite it, I said gently. You can just decide what you do next. He nodded, staring at the steering wheel. I'm trying, he said. I really am. I believed him in the limited, flawed way you can believe in someone who has already shown you their capacity for running. I didn't offer him comfort about Claire. He didn't deserve sympathy for being abandoned by someone he'd chosen over us. What he did deserve was the chance to sit with that reality and learn from it. These days, when people talk about karma, they act like it's some magical force that punishes bad people with lightning bolts and rewards good people with lottery tickets. In my dad's case, karma looked a lot less dramatic. It looked like an empty apartment after the woman he blew up his family for packed her suitcase and walked out the same day the child support withdrawals started. It looked like working extra hours to cover bills my mom calmly, stubbornly, reliably paid for years without complaint. It looked like watching his daughter cross stages and hit milestones from a few rows back instead of right beside her, because that front row seat had been reserved long ago for the parent who never left. He abandoned us for someone who abandoned him the minute he was forced to show up as more than a wallet and an escape hatch. We lost a father in our house. He lost a family that would have loved him even when the money wasn't easy. And that's the part he'll have to live with long after the last child support payment clears. That's where this story ends for me. But it's where the conversation starts for you. What would you have done in my place? Do you think my dad deserved a second chance after she left him? Is going to court for child support petty, or just protecting your kid? Can you ever fully forgive a parent who abandoned you for an affair? Drop your honest thoughts in the comments. Your perspective might help someone else who's living through this right now. If this story hit close to home or kept you listening till the end, tap like so it reaches more people who need to hear it. Subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Share this video with a friend who understands messy families and quiet karma. Thanks for spending this time with me. Take care of yourself. Take care of the people who actually stay, and remember, you're allowed to choose peace over keeping the perfect family picture.